Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mastering English Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Sam.
Today, we are doing a really serious deep dive into the psychology of making progress. And I mean real progress, the kind that actually sticks. Not just, that little burst of motivation you feel on January
I'll
1st.
be there.
Totally. It's like you decide you're going to learn a brand new skill or finish some huge assignment for work or maybe just finally get a consistent exercise routine going.
Yeah.
You feel this like intense energy for maybe 2 days,
Yeah.
and then bam, the sheer size of the thing just hits you like a brick wall.
And that moment right there, that's the crucial turning point. It's really the difference between just having an intention and actually, implementing it.
Intention versus implementation. I like that.
We all have the desire, the intention, but what our source material shows is that we often lack the structural tools to deal with those emotional potholes that always come up. And that's why people quit after 2 weeks.
Right.
They hit that wall, they feel completely overwhelmed because they just don't have a mental roadmap.
Exactly. That whole cycle of starting really strong and then just burning out. That's our mission today. We are going to provide you, our listener, with those structural tools you need.
Yeah, we're pulling strategies directly from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT.
And we're pairing that with some really fascinating new psychological research on how you should actually lay out your plans to get the most motivation.
You can think of this as getting the operational manual for your own mind, like a user guide to shift from feeling stuck and reactive to, taking intentional, effective action.
Okay, and here's the part that really, really got my attention when we were looking at the research. This is the teaser for everyone listening. We are going to tackle this central conflict in planning. When you set a goal, does planning your steps from the start and moving forward, what they call forward planning, or starting at the finish line and moving backward, which is backward planning, which one makes you more motivated?
It's such a great question because our intuition, I think for most of us, is to just look forward. But the research has this really surprising and specific answer.
It does.
The effectiveness of that backward planning. It actually depends completely on the timeline of your goal.
Right. So it's not a simple one is better than the other.
Not at all. We found that backward planning is this incredibly effective tool for short-term goals. But, and this is the strange part, it kind of loses its power when you're looking years and years into the future.
We are going to unpack exactly why that is, including the key psychological thing that's happening in your brain. But first, get ready for pop quiz later.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to use 4 key phrases that we will define and master today: psychoeducational, automatic thoughts, backward planning, and sequential contingency.
And these terms, they sound technical, but they are going to be the pillars of your new knowledge toolkit.
They really are.
So stick with us, because understanding these 4 concepts is really where the rubber meets the road in achieving, lasting progress.
And before we jump in, a quick but really important favor. If you're enjoying this kind of detailed breakdown, please hit that subscribe button for Mastering English Podcast and give us a like on this deep dive.
It really does help us reach and support more learners just like you.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's unpack this source material on CBT.
Let's do it.
So when we talk about tackling procrastination or anxiety or just these huge, overwhelming goals, the strategy we're looking at often comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. You said earlier it's structured and skill-based. Why is that structure so important?
Well, that structure is really the defining element. Our sources, they really emphasize that CBT is not just about, open-ended talk or just venting about your feelings in a general way.
Okay, so it's not just how does that make you feel for an hour?
Exactly. The whole process is defined by its really rigorous roadmap and its collaborative, active nature. The ultimate idea, is to fundamentally change how you engage with the world by teaching you these concrete, repeatable skills.
So let's go back to the name itself. Cognitive therapy plus behavioral therapy. It's a fusion. So what does each side focus on?
Think of it as mind and body, or maybe thought and action. Cognitive therapy is focused completely on thinking, the act of knowing, of recognizing, of interpreting our experiences.
Okay.
The goal of that half is to teach you how to examine and change the dysfunctional thoughts, the core beliefs, and the attitudes that are contributing to your problem, whether that's depression, anxiety, or what we're talking about, goal paralysis.
And the main idea there is that your thoughts basically create your reality, right?
Precisely. It operates on this core CBT idea that 2 people can face the exact same negative situation, like, say, a failed presentation at work, But because they think about it differently, they're going to have these vastly different emotional and behavioral reactions.
Oh, for sure. One person might think, okay, that failed, but I'll learn from it and just moves on.
Right. While the other person might instantly think, I'm a total incompetent, I am never going to succeed.
And that second reaction is fueled completely by a flawed thought process that the person believes is like a fact. And that's the work of the cognitive side.
Exactly. Now, the behavioral therapy side, that focuses on actions and reactions. This part of the model, especially when you're talking about something like depression, suggests that depressed individuals often experience what they call insufficient positive reinforcement from their environment.
Whoa, hang on. I want to stop and unpack that for a second. That's a very clinical way of saying that.
It is.
So if someone is depressed, we usually think they just feel bad on the inside. But this model is saying they're physically getting less good stuff from the world around them.
That is the inside of the behavioral model, and it is so crucial. It's not just about feeling bad. It's about a measurable lack of positive interactions or rewards. And our sources break this down into two key patterns that just reinforce that whole depressive cycle.
Okay, what are those two patterns?
So the first pattern is a low level of positive feelings because of reduced engagement. Because they feel low, they stop participating in activities they used to enjoy.
Right, they stop going to the gym, they don't call their friends back.
Exactly. They ignore invitations. And since they aren't engaging with life, they get less pleasure, less enjoyment, less positive feedback. This just spirals into isolation.
The isolation spiral.
Yeah.
So they feel bad, which leads to them doing nothing, which leads to them having no positive experiences, which then just makes them feel even worse.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy of negativity. And the second pattern is a high rate of negative consequences.
Okay, what does that mean?
This happens because when they do interact, they're more likely to notice failures or feel misunderstood by other people or just perceive this profound lack of support. This constant flood of perceived negative stuff further reinforces the belief that, the world is an unkind or a punishing place.
So cognitive therapy deals with the mental filter, the thoughts, and behavioral therapy addresses the cycle of action or inaction and the environment. So when they combine, that's when we get the powerful cognitive behavioral model, that classic vicious cycle.
Yes, the core model is always shown as that interconnected loop. Situation, which connects to thought, which connects to emotion, which connects to behavior. A situation leads to an automatic thought, which triggers an emotion, which then drives a behavior.
And that behavior then feeds back into the whole system.
Right. It either reinforces the original thought or it creates a whole new negative situation. It's a dynamic system. So interrupting the cycle at any point, thought, emotion, or behavior, that can create positive change.
This sounds so structured, almost like an academic program. What should a listener expect if they were going to engage in a CBT process? What's the actual structure?
The structure is very intentional. Our sources highlight several key components. First, it is evidence-based. This is not just theory. It has been rigorously tested in research studies and has proven its clinical effectiveness.
Okay. And second, it's intensely structured. When you say structured, does that mean they follow the same script every single time?
In essence, yeah. You can expect very clear goals, detailed roadmaps, and a standard session format. Every session, for example, involves setting an agenda together, reviewing last week's practice assignment, which they call homework.
Homework?
Yeah, then discussing the agenda items, implementing a new cognitive or behavioral strategy, and then assigning the new homework.
Yeah.
That consistency is just vital for building new habits.
But why the homework? Couldn't they just talk about it in the session?
Well, it's because of the principle of generalization. If you only practice these new skills for 1 hour a week in the safe therapy room, they'll never become automatic in your real life.
Ah, I see.
The source really stresses that the only way to succeed is through active participation and home practice. It requires like a daily commitment to put the new skills to use.
That feels like the structure of learning anything difficult, really, whether it's a language, a new math concept, the piano. It's the daily practice that actually changes your brain.
Absolutely. And that leads us directly to the concept that defines this whole structured, skill-based approach.
Wait, hang on. That's a cool word. I've heard psychoeducational, but it sounds incredibly technical. What does that actually mean in plain English?
It's a great word. The term psychoeducational means the entire program is explicitly designed to educate you, the learner, about the psychology of your problem.
Okay.
It teaches you the skills and strategies you need, often by giving you really clear, explicit information about the models and cycles we just talked about. It literally means educational content about psychological stuff.
So it's like getting a meticulously written manual for your own mind.
That's a perfect way to put it. It focuses on skill enhancement rather than just, symptom relief. The goal isn't just to cure the problem temporarily, but to equip you with the knowledge to manage it yourself in the future. You become the expert of your own recovery.
I love that. You're teaching someone how to fish, not just giving them a fish.
Precisely. Let's look at a few ways you might hear this word used in different contexts to make it clearer.
Oh.
So, for example, in a formal setting, you might hear, the university's mental health department offered a psychoeducational series of workshops aimed at helping students recognize and manage early signs of stress.
So that highlights the instructional part of it.
Right. Now, in a more casual context, after listening to the entire series on financial habits, I realized the whole thing was incredibly psychoeducational. I now understand the deeper reasons why I spend money when I feel anxious.
So it's that aha moment of self-discovery.
Exactly. And here's a kind of funny application. My new smart refrigerator comes with a psychoeducational screen that reminds me of healthy eating habits every time I open the door, which is annoying but effective.
Huh. I like the fridge example. Okay, let's try a quick scenario role play to use this word naturally.
Sounds good.
So I'm really struggling to get into this new software program at work. The manual is just awful. It just tells me what buttons to click, but not why the workflow is designed this way.
That sounds like a failure of design. A truly effective learning approach would be way more psychoeducational. They should start by teaching you the core logic and the underlying theory of the software, and then show you how to do the tasks based on that understanding.
Right. I need the content to be more psychoeducational. Learning the rules first, the why, would make all the practice afterwards so much more effective.
Spot on. And when we look at how this word is paired in English, you'll often see collocations like psychoeducational program, manual, approach, material, and content. It always refers back to that key element of teaching or skill transfer.
Okay, so we've established the foundation of CBT. It's structured, it's collaborative, and it's psychoeducational. Now let's drill down into the actual cognitive process of change. Our sources outline 3 distinct steps in moving from just being aware to actually taking action.
Yeah, these 3 steps, they form the operational core of the cognitive part. Step 1 is awareness. You just can't change what you don't recognize.
Simple enough.
It means identifying the whole system, becoming aware of your automatic thoughts, the feelings that go with them, the deeper core beliefs, and the behaviors that follow. It's just pure observation at this stage.
That sounds simple, but I think for a lot of people, just observing their own thoughts, especially the negative, persistent ones, is incredibly hard.
Oh, it is. It's very challenging because our thoughts feel like us. But that realization is the key to step 2, examination.
Okay.
This is where we apply critical thinking and really challenge that idea that thoughts are facts. You have to realize that most thoughts are just interpretations. They're not objective truths. You need to gather evidence, question the belief, test if it's rational.
So you become a detective, basically, checking the evidence for and against your own self-judgment.
Exactly. And that leads directly to step 3, creation. Once you examine and question the irrational thoughts, you begin developing and implementing alternative, more balanced, and more rational thoughts.
You're actively restructuring your internal dialogue.
Yes. To increase positive self-talk and reduce your reliance on those flawed, negative, automatic interpretations.
Let's zoom in on a core enemy here, automatic thoughts. You mentioned they are fast. What else defines them, and why do they hold so much power over us?
Our sources emphasize a few key things. They are a surface-level, non-volitional stream of consciousness. They just pop into your head.
I feel like I have a constant stream of them all day long, especially when I make a tiny mistake.
Everyone does. They're words, images, memories, or even physical sensations that appear reflexively without any conscious choice or deliberate planning. The reason they gain so much power is just repetition.
Right.
We tend to automatically accept them as true, whether they're positive or, more often, negative. The more frequently they repeat, I can't do this is too hard, nothing good ever happens, the more ingrained and believable they become, even if the evidence says otherwise.
It's like the mental equivalent of hearing bad news over and over until you just treat it as an established fact.
Precisely. And we have to maintain that important distinction here for our B1 learners. Thoughts are full sentences or images. For example, that person is judging me.
Okay.
Emotions, on the other hand, are usually just one word. anxious, sad, or hopeless.
Got it. Okay, let's put the spotlight on the technical term automatic thoughts. Sam, if they're just reflexive, why can't we just tell them to stop? Why are they so powerful?
They're powerful because they aren't just surface-level ideas floating around in isolation. They are the rapid output based on much deeper foundational structures, our core beliefs.
The roots of the tree.
They're the leaves of the tree we talked about. You can't stop them instantly because they're reflexive reactions. They're generated automatically. But you can control them indirectly by learning to identify them, challenge their validity, and ultimately change the deep core beliefs that are feeding them.
So you control the root, not the leaves. That makes a lot of sense. Let's hear some examples of automatic thoughts in action.
Absolutely. So think of this formal scenario. During the quarterly review, despite mostly positive feedback, the CEO's automatic thought upon hearing a minor point of criticism was that the entire quarter had been a failure.
That instant jump to catastrophe.
Right. Here's a casual scenario. Whenever the kitchen light flickers, my immediate automatic thought is that I need to call an electrician, even though it's always just a loose bulb.
Ah, that's me.
It's that unbidden reaction that just bypasses logic. And here's a funny one. When the server puts a plate down, my automatic thought is always that the portion is too small, even if I haven't tried the food yet.
The moment of catastrophic projection. Okay, let's quickly demonstrate how to apply step 2 examination to challenge an automatic thought.
Okay, you give me the trigger and the catastrophic thought.
All right, I'm trying to learn a new language, and I just made a simple grammar error in front of a native speaker. My automatic thought is, I will never be fluent, I'm too stupid to learn this, and I should just quit.
Wow. That spiral is intense, but so common. Okay, let's apply examination. Is it a fact that you are too stupid to learn?
Well, no.
What is the evidence? The evidence against this thought is that you successfully learn complex things every single day. An alternative, more rational thought might be, that was a mistake, but mistakes are necessary steps in learning. I'll make a note of that grammar rule and practice it later.
So that reframe directly addresses the behavior making a mistake without validating the core belief that I am stupid. That's the whole goal.
Correct. And when you're talking about automatic thoughts, common collocations include negative, intrusive, surface level, immediate, and unhelpful.
Now let's go deeper and address the roots you mentioned, the thinking hierarchy. Tell us more about that tree metaphor.
The metaphor is perfect because it really shows the stability of these ideas. At the very bottom, the permanent foundation are the core beliefs. These are absolute, often unconscious statements about yourself, other people, and the world. They're rigid, I am unlovable, people are dangerous, or the world is unjust.
And if that foundation is built on negative beliefs, then the entire structure of your thinking is just compromised.
Exactly. The core belief dictates everything above it. Above the roots are the intermediate beliefs, which form the trunk and the major branches. These are the rules, assumptions, or guidelines we live by. Things like, if I am not always helpful, people will abandon me.
Or, I must avoid confrontation at all costs to remain safe.
Right, and then the automatic thoughts are the leaves. They're quick, responsive, they change constantly, but their overall health and quality are determined by the strength and nature of the roots. That visualization really helps.
It does. It connects the momentary reaction to the lifelong programming.
And because those core beliefs are so deep, the CBT manuals rely on specific techniques to dig them up. We should go into depth on one of the most powerful ones, the downward arrow technique.
Okay, how does that work? I think listeners really need to hear a detailed example of this psychological drilling.
It's surprisingly simple, but it can be emotionally demanding. You start with an observation, a situation that provokes an unhealthy emotion. Let's use an example you might face. You feel highly anxious because you missed a work deadline.
Okay, so my initial thought is, I am anxious because I missed the deadline.
Right. Now the technique starts. We ask the critical question, and we just keep asking it until there's no further meaning, until we hit that absolute core belief. And the question is, and if that were true about yourself, what would that mean to you?
Okay, so if it's true I missed the deadline, I would answer, that means I am irresponsible and unprofessional.
Good. Now we ask the question again. And if that were true, what would it mean to you to be unprofessional?
To be unprofessional, that means I'm incompetent and everyone sees me as a failure.
And we drill deeper. And if everyone saw you as a failure, what would that mean to you?
That means I'm basically useless and I'm going to lose my job and end up living alone.
You're getting closer to the root. Let's go for the absolute statement. And if you are useless, what is the ultimate truth about yourself?
The ultimate truth is, I am completely worthless. I am unlovable.
That is the core belief.
Oh.
The process forces you to drill down past the surface anxiety about the deadline, past the intermediate belief about professionalism, until you hit that deep, absolute statement about self-worth.
Wow.
It shows you that the anxiety isn't really about the deadline. It's about the fear of confirming your deep-seated belief that you are worthless.
That conversational demonstration makes the technique so much clearer. It's like a guided excavation of your own mind.
It is. And once that core belief is identified, I am worthless, then you can apply the examination phase, challenging the evidence for and against that belief, which then allows you to create a more functional, rational replacement.
That's so powerful. Speaking of creating new habits, you also mentioned some practical interrupt techniques for intrusive thoughts, like thought stopping. Why do those simple actions, like just saying "soft P," actually help?
They help because they leverage the behavioral side of CBT to interrupt the cognitive momentum. When an automatic thought gains speed, it creates a mental pathway. Thought stopping is a rapid interrupt intended to break that pathway.
Okay.
The instruction is to first recognize the negative obsessive thought process. Then interrupt it immediately by visualizing a huge red S-stop-P sign or shouting S-stop-P internally.
So it's like a conditioned response to derail the negative thought train.
Exactly. It redirects your mental resources away from the worry loop. And a related, highly effective technique we should talk about is scheduling worry time.
I love this idea, but how do you actually do it? It sounds impossible to control when you worry.
It's a very sophisticated behavioral tool that uses structure to fight rumination. First, you choose a designated time and place, say 6:00 p.m. to 6:20 p.m., sitting in a specific chair. This is your worry window.
Okay.
Second, if a worry pops up outside that time, say at 10:00 a.m. while you're trying to work, you tell yourself, and I mean literally say internally, thank you for the notification, but I will worry about that at 6:00 p.m.
And then what? Do you write it down?
Yes. You quickly jot down a 1 or 2 word note of the worry, like the bill or the project email, and you immediately return to your task. The note externalizes the worry. It assures your mind that it hasn't been forgotten, so your brain can let go of it for a moment.
Then, when 6:00 p.m. comes, you sit in the chair, pull out your list, and just worry productively for the full 20 minutes.
That's right. And often, you find that many of the worries listed earlier in the day seem kind of ridiculous or less urgent when you revisit them. You're distinguishing sharply between productive thinking, which leads to action, and unproductive worrying. By limiting the time spent on this unhealthy habit, the frequency and intensity of the negative thought cycle diminish over time.
That connection between cognitive strategy and the actual action we take is the perfect bridge for our next segment.
It is.
We spent a lot of time on thoughts and challenging beliefs, but the other half of CBT is the behavioral strategies, the actions, and the most fundamental behavioral strategy is setting effective goals.
That's right. Once you've challenged the thought that says, I am worthless, you need an action plan to prove the alternative belief. And before you can tackle any task, you need a highly structured pathway. That's where the SMART goals framework comes in.
Right.
It's foundational because it ensures that goals are concrete, measurable, and inherently action-oriented.
Okay, let's review the acronym, quickly highlighting what each letter means according to the source. Let's start with S, specific.
Specific goals eliminate all ambiguity. They identify a specific action or event that will take place, answering the 5 W's and H, who, what, when, where, how.
So instead of exercise more,
A specific goal is, I will run 3 miles on the park trail at 7 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
okay, M is for measurable.
The goal must be quantifiable so that you can track progress objectively. If you can't measure it, you don't know if you achieved it. The question is, by what metric will I know I succeeded? 3 miles, 15 minutes of studying, 5 phone calls.
Got it. A is for achievable.
This means the goal must be attainable given your current resources, your time, your energy, your current skill level. And the source strongly cautions against setting goals based on what you used to be able to do.
That's a big one.
It's better to choose an easy task you will accomplish than a difficult one you will fail, because success provides that positive reinforcement.
Okay, R is for realistic. This one is often confused with achievable.
It is, but realistic means the goal has to be personally meaningful and truly matter to you. It has to align with your core values, family, career, mental health. If a goal isn't realistic in terms of your values, you just won't commit.
And finally, T for timely.
You have to state the time period for accomplishing the goal. This provides the deadline and the necessary urgency, ensuring the goal doesn't just float in the calendar forever.
So we know what makes a good goal, but once we have that SMART goal, we have to plan the steps.
Yes, and this moves us away from CBT and directly into the fascinating research we sourced on temporal planning direction.
This is where we shift from what to how. Traditionally, we use forward planning, present to future. Start today, list steps chronologically, hit the finish line.
Right. But the alternative is backward planning, also called backcasting. This means you mentally put yourself in the desired future state at the finish line, and you work backward toward the present.
And this strategy is actually really common outside of personal goal setting, isn't it?
Absolutely. Backcasting has long been used for large-scale policy issues, especially environmental or energy planning.
How does that work?
Well, instead of predicting energy use based on today's technology, which is forward planning, backcasting means imagining a fully sustainable society 50 years from now, and then figuring out the exact policy and technological changes required today to make that future inevitable.
I see the benefit there immediately. It stops you from limiting your future vision based on current constraints. It forces you to think about what is necessary rather than just what is possible.
It shifts the focus entirely to the desired outcome. The educational field uses it too, in what they call backward design.
Oh.
Teachers first identify the desired learning result, what the student must be able to do on the final exam, and only then do they design the daily lessons and instruction. It's outcome first, input last.
Okay, let's put the spotlight on the term backward planning. Sam, can you walk us through the actual process in plain English, making sure we capture that reverse chronological nature?
For sure. Backward planning means defining your final desired outcome in perfect detail. You establish the precise finish line. Then, you outline every single step required to reach that outcome, but you list them in reverse chronological order.
Okay.
You ask, what is the step that happens right before I succeed? And you keep asking that question until you arrive at the very first task you must do today.
I see. It's a totally different mental posture. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the start, you're energized by the finish line and driven by the immediate next step. Let's make this concrete with examples.
Okay, a formal example. The software development team used backward planning to ensure the new application was fully tested and approved 3 days before the public release, starting with the press launch date and working backward to the initial coding sprints.
Makes sense.
Now, a casual example. I used backward planning for my friend's surprise party. The last step was cutting the cake. The step before that was hiding the guests. The step before that was sending out the fake invitation for the cover story.
It creates a perfect sequence.
It does, and here's a slightly funny application. My plan to successfully host a massive dinner party started with backward planning the final step compliments from the guests, then the dessert, then plating the main course, and finally today, making sure I bought groceries.
I feel a burst of clarity just hearing that process laid out. It makes the end state feel so tangible. But does this method actually work to increase motivation?
This is the critical finding of the research. The effectiveness of backward planning depends heavily on the temporal scope of the goal, the length of time until the goal is achieved.
Let's look at that split. Short-term versus long-term.
For short-term goals, which the research defined as those achievable in about 6 months, backward planning was found to significantly heighten motivation and increase effort.
Wow.
The studies found that the boost in motivation was strongest near the end of the planning exercise when they were mapping out the immediate steps.
Why that late boost? Why not at the beginning of the planning?
It's because when you backward plan, the steps closest to the end of the plan are the tasks closest to your present reality. As you finalize the plan and identify the task you have to do today, the mental contrast between the desired future and your current immediate action creates this powerful perceived necessity to act.
So the goal feels closer and more dependent on the current task.
Exactly. The motivation comes from that urgent realization. If I want to launch this small business in 6 months, I absolutely must secure the domain name right now.
You feel the pull of the future goal, forcing your current action.
You do. Now, compare that to long-term goals, like those set for 6 or 10 years in the future. In these studies, backward planning did not increase motivation and was sometimes perceived as more difficult and abstract than just using forward planning.
That's a massive implication for people trying to visualize their entire career or retirement. You're saying if you try to backward plan a 10-year vision, that exercise might actually be demotivating.
It could be. The findings suggest that when the time scope is too large, the abstract nature of the distant vision, a 6-figure salary in 8 years, for example, makes it too hard to map out concrete dependent steps in reverse.
So the intermediate steps just become too vague.
Right, and the future goal feels too distant to exert any real motivational force on the present. So if you're planning a distant future, a less rigid, more exploratory forward planning might actually be better. But for the goal we want to accomplish this year, backward planning is king.
Okay.
And the reason it works so well for the short term is related to a specific psychological mechanism. It makes plans more contingent.
Sequential contingency. That's our most technical term today. Let's put the spotlight on it. Sam, is this just a fancy word for making sure you don't forget a step, like a long checklist?
It's much more specific than a checklist. Contingency means dependency. A plan has sequential contingency when each step is logically dependent on the one that came before it.
Okay.
It builds a necessary structure where the successful completion of step B is conditional on the successful completion of step A. It's the mandatory, logical, and dependent flow that connects everything.
So the goals are interconnected. If I miss the first step, the rest of the chain literally cannot stand.
That's the key distinction. The research notes that motivation was heightened because participants developed these highly contingent plans, such that each goal fit with and built upon the preceding goals. Backward planning forces you to think about these dependencies because you're moving from the fixed outcome back to the necessary inputs.
Let's demonstrate this with some clear examples, distinguishing contingency from just a simple list.
Okay, a formal example. The engineer redesigned the product assembly line to ensure high sequential contingency. The welding stage could not begin until the specific chemical pretreatment was certified as complete, ensuring absolute quality control.
Okay, that makes sense.
Here's a casual example. My attempt to repair the bicycle failed because it lacked sequential contingency. I tried to install the new tire tube before I had fully patched the hole in the tire itself.
Right. The next step was impossible without the previous one.
Exactly. And a simple scenario. Packing for my complicated trip required strong sequential contingency. I couldn't put the liquids in my suitcase until I had sealed them in separate plastic bags, or the whole plan would be ruined.
The moment of failure in each example is due to breaking that dependent chain. Let's try one more scenario. Contrasting a list with a contingent plan, maybe for preparing a complex presentation.
Okay, so if you use a non-contingent plan, it might just look like a list. Make slides, practice talking points, choose a nice outfit, show up to the meeting.
Right. But a contingent plan would have to be secure the final data needed from the research team, and then...
Right, which leads to draft the executive summary based on that data.
Then create the presentation slides only after the summary is approved.
Exactly, which then leads to schedule a full run-through practice session with the team for feedback. Because you must have the final data before you draft the summary, and the summary must be approved before you commit to the slides.
That logical chain, the strong sequential contingency, that's what backward planning automatically generates for short-term goals.
And that's what boosts your motivation by making the plan feel solid and real. And the key locations for this word often emphasize structure, you hear. Sequential contingent plan, goal structure, logical, dependent, and success.
Okay, I feel really equipped now to talk about dependent structures, especially using the term contingency. I have a phrase I want to test on you.
Go for it.
Can I say it like this? My achieving that difficult goal is contingency of my daily preparation.
Ah, that is a very common and logical mistake for an intermediate learner. You're trying to use the noun form to describe that causal relationship.
And that's not right.
Not quite with that phrasing. When describing dependency, native speakers would actually say, my achieving that goal is contingent upon my daily preparation.
Okay, so contingent upon.
We use contingent as the adjective there. We usually use the noun contingency in two specific ways. First, to describe that dependent relationship in general, like the contingency of the plan was strong, or, most commonly, to refer to an unexpected future event.
You mean like having a backup plan, a plan B?
Precisely. We talk about needing a contingency plan in case the main project fails, or we set aside emergency funds for unforeseen contingencies. It refers to the unexpected thing you need to prepare for.
Got it. Success is contingent upon effort, and we need a contingency plan for the unexpected. I will not make that mistake again. Okay, we have covered some massive ground today, from the deep roots of our core beliefs to the optimal planning strategies. Let's see how much we and the listener retained with the promised pop quiz.
All right, listener, test yourself along with Alex.
Question 1. Which structured approach is defined by being skill-based, collaborative, and designed to equip the patient with the knowledge to manage their own psychology.
That is the psychoeducational component. It's all about knowledge transfer and empowerment, giving you the manual for your mind.
Perfect. Question 2. What term describes the rapid, non-volitional, surface-level thoughts that pop into your head and gain power through repetition, but are not necessarily facts?
Those are automatic thoughts. They are the leaves of the cognitive tree, the most immediate manifestation of deeper beliefs.
Excellent. Question 3. Which planning strategy involves starting with the final desired outcome and moving in reverse chronological order toward the present, and is most effective for goals achievable in the next 6 months?
That would be backward planning. It uses the clarity of the end goal to motivate immediate action.
And the final question. Which highly technical term describes the logical, dependent flow between steps in a plan, where one goal must fit with and build upon the preceding goals to ensure the entire structure holds?
That is sequential contingency.
Yes.
It's the critical mechanism that makes short-term backward planning so motivational.
You crushed that, and I hope you listening did too. Now let's distill this entire deep dive into the 3 most important ideas you need to take away.
Okay, first, remember the fundamental structure of the CBT model. The core connection between thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. They all influence each other in a dynamic, reinforcing loop, and changing any one point, especially your behavior or your thoughts, can break that vicious cycle.
Second, acknowledge the role of automatic thoughts and the underlying core beliefs. They are not facts, and you now have the tools like the downward arrow technique and thought stopping to actively identify, challenge, and manage the roots of your negative self-talk.
And third, leverage the power of backward planning for your short-term goals. Remember that this method is highly effective, specifically because it increases sequential contingency, creating a structured, highly motivational chain reaction that forces you to define and execute the most critical immediate task today.
Here is your micro-challenge. Take one goal you have for the next month, something specific and challenging, and try to use the backward planning method to create at least 3 steps with high sequential contingency.
Decide the final outcome, then work backward to the task you need to do tomorrow.
Then, share one of the steps in the comments below.
And don't forget, if you enjoyed this detailed exploration of goal-setting psychology, you're going to love our other deep dives.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Mastering English Podcast.
Thank you for joining us in the deep dive today.
I'm Alex. See you next